Hey brewers, little Annie and I are in the brewery today because of school holidays, and we're going to knock up a Belgian Blonde, a light yellow, dry, refreshing, lager-like beer with a fruitcake twist. Let's get brewing. For this brew we're using 100% super blend from Hoppy Dave's. It's a mix of compass malt predominantly, and then it's got a little bit of Vienna to add some colour and some malt complexity, and some chip malt to improve foam stability and mouthfeel. So it's got all the ingredients all ready for the Belgian Blonde that we want to make, so I thought we'll give this a go. 7 kilos of super blend. We're going to mash that at 65 degrees Celsius so that we can hit that middle mash temperature to give us some good sugar conversions but still retain some dextrins for body and mouthfeel. Now while this is draining, I'm going to transfer some into a boil kettle, the G30, and the reason I'm doing that is in the past I have ended up with crud, whether flour and protein break, on the bottom of the element. So to avoid that, to avoid disappointment, I'm transferring the wort from this potentially cruddy kettle with the crusty boil element into a fresh one so that I can start a boil without the worry of getting a burnt crusty element. So you might not need to do that at home, but I'm doing it to avoid later disappointment. So I've just emptied the S40 where we did our mash, and you see this little horseshoe shape? Just a flour and protein and cruds that sort of stick to that element, and that's what I was concerned about, that if I left if I did my boil in this same vessel, that this would just burn. All this flour, protein and crud on here burns, and I do think it impacts the final flavour of the beer. So I'm glad I transferred this wort into the G30 and okay, that's our boil timer. It's got 60 minutes to go. We're going to add 50 grams of Zarts. Okay, for the last 10 minutes of the boil, we're going to add 25 grams of Mandarina Bavaria. I'm hoping that the citrus notes that come from these hops, plus the herbal quality of them, will complement the esters thrown off by the yeast. According to Brew Father, I need 30 grams of yeast for this brew, so I've got my big 100 gram pack of BE256 and I'm going to measure out 30 grams. Okay, we're going to set our temperature to, let's go to 21 degrees Celsius. We don't want it too hot, but we do want to get some interesting esters and yeast character out of this yeast. The other thing I'm trying for this brew is actually no water in my airlock. With this senior airlock, I've just got some tiny little holes there, which I think should be sufficient to keep the fruit flies out. I'm doing that so that I reduce the pressure on the yeast. The idea is that these Belgian yeasts don't like any sort of pressure, even just that mild little pressure from the air in the water lock. So by taking the water out of the airlock, I'm getting rid of that pressure, and it's going to allow the yeast to do its thing in the way that it does best. You reckon? Well, there she is, brewers. A Belgian Blonde. You look at that, it's got beautiful lacing there, nice white head. The beer looks quite dark. If I get a bit of light behind that, it's actually quite a nice yellow, going close to amber in the colour, so it's really turned out quite nice, quite a pretty beer to look at. All right, let's check the aroma. Yeah, strong citrus element and maybe even some stone fruit in there I think might come from that hop, but it's quite a low aroma. All right, let's dive in and have a taste. Yeah, the most obvious thing here is the esters that the yeast have produced. It's got that strong citrus, orangey lemon type flavour, which is really nice, and I do think that the hop, those late hops, help to boost those aromas and flavour profile. It's got a beautiful soft finish and mouthfeel. To finish, the bitterness is just enough, I think, to stop it becoming like cloying or sweet. There's just enough hop bitterness to support the malt profile. I really like it. I think it's come up quite nice. There's also a bit of maybe a spicy peppery character to some of the pepper that the yeast has produced, but it's certainly subtle. Overall, it's more the fruit that the esters have produced that has overwhelmed the profile. Yeah, I'd do that again. I think that's really nice, and go ahead, try it for yourself. The tip I was mentioning was I didn't put water in the airlock for this beer, and the reason is that those Belgian yeast have evolved over time to not have air in the airlocks. If you go to Belgium, you'll see they have these big containers which the yeast will ferment, and then the beer will be taken out of them and bottled, and then they'll be filled up again. And so you've got to realize that these Belgian yeasts have evolved that way. They're not used to having an airlock. They're not used to having that little bit of pressure. And I think leaving this airlock open without air, open to the elements with no pressure, has really improved the final product. I've had none of those sulfur that I've had in other beers using this yeast, but those are completely gone. So that's my tip. When you use this yeast, the BE256, don't put water in the airlock. And if you want to try something different, why not check out this video in which I try to make a Belgian braggot.